If you'd like to talk about your own Bigfoot encounter, or if you're looking for help from a Bigfoot investigator in your area, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. No Sasquatch were harmed in the recording of this podcast.
Okay, my name is Michael Bluler. I'm from Biloxi, Mississippi.
Mike, thank you for joining me on Bigfoot Crossroads. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. It's pretty hot here.
Is it?
Yeah, we're waiting on the for the autumn weather to get here. It's 90, 100 plus every day. get a few little breaks with the rainstorms, but that's about it.
Yeah, you're a hunter, aren't you?
Oh yes.
Yeah,
Avid hunter.
Getting ready for deer season then.
Yeah, archery season's going to start October 15th, where I'm from anyways.
Do you do archery and rifle and all of it?
Archery, rifle, yes. Yes, sir.
Cool. So, if you don't mind, take your time. Like I said, if you need a break, just let me know. It's not an issue. Just kind of, walk me through what happened.
Okay. In South Mississippi, we have 3 different kind of deer seasons. We have archery season, we have a regular rifle season, and down here in South Mississippi, they hunt deer with dogs.
Okay.
I don't do the dog hunting. I did it when I was younger with friends and stuff like that. It's very dangerous, but it's like a living legend down here.
Yeah, I certainly have never heard of that in Oklahoma.
Yeah, what they do is they use walkers, which is it's an American foxhound, and they train it. They train these dogs, with the smell of the deer. It's basically like a man drive. Yeah, but they use dogs to do it. Okay, they'll circle off an area, and it's just not my thing. As as I got older and stuff like that. So, anyways, it was the middle of dog season. It was December 17th, and the areas that I was hunting was being dog hunted, and I'm a still hunter. When that season comes around, I'll go up. I'll have a place in a management area called Leaf River Management Area. There's no dog hunting allowed in there, and it's very big and very vast. No houses around for miles and miles and miles. So, it's just like a basic management area. The game wardens take care of it pretty good. They plant it with ryegrass, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I had a certain spot that I used to hunt off a ryegrass field that was attached. Well, there used to be a power line that ran straight through this ryegrass field. And what I would do is I would go down the power line and get probably about 500 yards back behind that ryegrass field to catch the deer, slipping in and stuff like that. Yeah. Because our deer down here are mostly nocturnal because of, even though it's dog, even if you're still hunting down here, the pressure on the deer is so bad. Yeah. So I used to get, a good 500 yards behind that field off the power line. And I had a lot of success because these deer would, they would wait. They'd basically wait till it got dark to come on this field. But I would catch them slipping. Mm-hmm. And it was just a normal day, man. This is probably about 50 miles from my house. I live on the coast in Mississippi, Biloxi, Mississippi. So it's about a 50-mile shot, hour away. Whatever you want to call it, because a lot of dirt roads and stuff like that. Can't drive fast. Normal day, man. And I was sitting on the power line. There was like this, the best way to explain it for your audience, it was kind of like a wedge that I used to sit in. And I get really high up the tree. I get 30 foot plus. I mean, I get up there.
Yeah, that's up there.
Yeah, I wear a safety harness and all that stuff, because if you fall 30 foot, man, you're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, to say the least. So anyways, yeah, it was a normal day. I'm up the tree, and it's probably about 4:15 or so, and it's getting pitch black dark at probably 5:30, somewhere around in there, 5:25, 5:30. And, I've been up the tree since 2:00.
Yeah.
No action, nothing going on. But, usually if you're a deer hunter, your action starts either at dark or right before, you know? So I'm sitting up there, and it's getting to be, a little bit after 4:15, something like that. And I hear something coming behind me, and it's walking real heavy, and it's breaking bushes and stuff. And you got to understand, the woods in Mississippi is very, very thick.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of gallberry bushes, a lot of briars, stuff like that. Even when you're up the tree and you're looking down, it's still hard to see something in the woods because it's so thick. You have to let it step out on the power lines or somewhere where there's a clearing. And that's what it was, man. It was very heavy, but it was walking slow. I'm thinking it might be a big deer or something. Yeah. And it gets right on the side of me, probably about 30 yards away. I'm facing west, and this thing's coming from the east side straight behind me, and it gets about 30 yards on the side of me and stops. And it's weird because it's like heavy breathing, like almost labored breathing. And I can't see it. I can hear it. And all of a sudden I don't hear anything anymore. It gets, I'm listening to this it's on the side of me for like 5, 7, maybe 10 minutes. So I don't hear anything anymore. And I'm saying, well, it was probably a buck. He probably winded me or something. He didn't blow at me. So he probably just slipped out. Maybe he's seen me up there and I didn't see him, or he just smelled me and just went the other way, slipped out to where I couldn't hear him.
Right.
So I'm like, damn, that sucks, And I'm sitting there, and probably about 10 minutes later, got to remember, I'm facing west. The sun's going down. The sun's going down, but it's still up a little bit to where I can see, Yeah. And I catch something out of my right peripheral, about 120 yards away. Steps out on the power lines, and it's solid black. And we do have black bears here. And, I'm supposed to wear glasses. I didn't have my contacts or my glasses in that day. So it steps out on the power line and just sits there. And I'm saying, oh man, look, it's a bear, I've never seen we have black bears. I've never seen one in real life, but I've picked them up on trail cams and stuff like that. A lot of times they'll have like an orange collar on or something. Something that the state released. That's what I thought it was. So I looked through my scope, and I got a 7mm Magnum Browning, and it's got a by-50 Zeiss on it. It's a very powerful scope. And I looked at it, and it was sitting down. It was weird. It was sitting down, and it just didn't make any sense to me. It still didn't.
Whenever you say sitting down, like in the position a bear would sit down, or? No,
it was different. It was more like it was weird. Like if a bear sits down, he's going to sit down, and he's going to be sitting on his butt, but he's still going to have his knees up and his paws on his side. It wasn't like that. It was nothing like that. And that's what puzzled me. So, I powered my scope up a little higher to look at this thing. And it was just crazy. I was looking at his hair, and his hair wasn't what's the word I'm trying to use? It didn't look like pelt. It didn't look like
fur,
hide. You know?
Yeah.
It was like human hair. It was like a rock star's hair, but it was on his back. And I rose it up and I looked at the top of his head, and his head was like conical shaped. It was weird. I said, it still didn't even dawn on me what it was.
Mm-hmm. Because at this point, I mean, we spoke very briefly before we started the show, and you had talked about how before this incident, Bigfoot wasn't even anything that you thought was possible.
No, I thought it was all bullcrap.
So obviously, you're hunting deer in Mississippi.
Yes.
The last thing on your mind is a Bigfoot.
Still, at this point, I'm still confused.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little rattled. I'm almost to the point to where I'm like, is somebody playing a trick on me? What is this? You know, my mind's going in like a million directions.
Right.
So I took the scope off of it and I just tried to bear down and look at it with my own eyes. And I noticed it moved. So I put the scope back on him, and that's when I got scared. He kind of turned his face a little bit, and he did not have a snout like a bear or a dog or anything. I just seen the side of his face. I seen one of his eyes, solid black, like a shark's eyes. There was no white in it, no nothing like that. That's when I panicked. I didn't know. It's really hard to say. Is this thing like a gorilla? There's no zoos around. Nobody's down here is going to have a pet gorilla.
Right.
And the sheer size of this thing, I got a real good chance to look at it, man, for a while. And I'm looking at the sun, and I'm freaking out. I know that eventually, if I don't shoot, say something, or do something, the sun's going to go down, and I'm going to be in the pitch black with whatever this is. And still to this day, I don't know why I did it. People that I've told my encounter to don't know why I did it. But I just yelled. I said, "Hey," real loud.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did that, it was all in one motion. This thing put its hands on the ground and just popped up on its feet. He didn't know I was there. I don't know if he was doing the same thing I was doing. You know, maybe an ambush on a deer or whatever. But this thing starts pacing around on 2 feet and scanning the woods, looking for the source of the sound. And then he yelled. When he yelled, it was like something I've never heard in my life, ever. It was so ear-piercing, and it was so just... It's like it started in his gut. It gurgled, and then when he let it out, it sounded like the mixture between a lion's roar and a man yelling as hard as he can, a big man.
Wow.
Yes.
At that point, were you just... Are you still looking at it in your scope, or have you pulled the gun down?
I'm still looking at him in my scope.
Okay.
Well, I'm going back and forth.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying not to make too much movement.
Right.
But I'm going back and forth. I'm looking through the scope, and then I'm putting my gun down, trying to look, see what he's going to do. And he starts scanning, walking in circles. It was like he was pissed off. He couldn't find the source of the sound.
Right.
And he finally looked at me. He didn't know what it was weird. He didn't know what it was like. He looked in my direction directly at me, but it was like he didn't, it was the same. It was kind of like the same feeling I had. It was like, what am I looking at?
Since you were hunting, I assume you were wearing camouflage. Were you wearing any blaze orange or anything?
No. I wear a blaze. Once I get up the tree, I take all my orange off.
Okay.
But yeah, when you're walking through the woods, you have to have it on.
Right.
Which is smart. So anyways, he looked at me, and I'm still confused. And I just looked at him. I said, I'm right here. When I did that, he walked straight to me. He walked straight to my tree and got 30 yards from my tree. And we had, I'm going to get into detail, but we had about a 25-minute staring contest.
Wow.
Yes. Once he got to my tree, that's when I grabbed my gun. I put him back in the scope, but I had it on high power. Everything was just like a big black blur. Mm-hmm. So I had to power my scope back down all to, I can see him good again. And I'm going to tell you what, this thing had so many different facial expressions and just things that he was doing. Oh, I left something out. When he was walking to me, he started talking, but it was like gibberish. It was like Tasmanian devil stuff. It was like, oh, yo, when he was walking to me.
You said he was about 120 yards out whenever you spotted him?
Yep.
How long did it take him to cover the distance?
Not long. It looked like when he was walking to me, it was weird. It was all two motion. It was almost like, to be honest with you, it looked like he had like snow skis on or something. Not on his feet, but his body movement. Mm-hmm. It took him no time to get to me. No time. And he had no fear. He got 30 yards from me. I finally got him back in the scope, started looking at him. And every time I was doing the same thing that I was doing when he was on the power line. I would put him in a scope, and then I never would put my gun down all the way, but I would just look up from my scope and look at him.
Right.
And every time I would bear down on my scope, he would turn his head and just look at me sideways. It was almost like he was giving me the look as, don't you do it. Don't you do it. That's why I think these things know what guns are. That went on probably about 20 or 25 minutes, man. And I looked at him real good in the scope. I got a chance to see his hair real good. I got to see his hands real good. I never, through this whole encounter I'm fixing to tell you, I never one time seen his feet. Not that I was looking. It was just one of them things. I've never seen his feet. I seen his hands real good. His hands were like ours, but the skin was different. The skin was like almost like an ashy gray. His face, he had a hooded nose, like a human nose, but it was much bigger. You know how apes and, gorillas have like that smash nose?
Yeah.
He didn't have that. He had a hooded nose like us.
Okay.
I want to say he almost looked, if I had to describe his face, much bigger than ours. But I would have to say that his face was more Native American looking, with probably a little Neanderthal in there. It was, and his mouth was huge. His mouth was gigantic. He didn't have big lips or anything, but his mouth, I'm going to get to that too. His eyes were solid black. I don't know if that's a daytime thing. I don't know if that's like something protective over their eyes naturally, but his eyes were solid black. Like a shark's eyes. He was, like I said, it was 20, 25 minutes. I got to look at a lot, man. And he started pacing again, like he did on the power lines. It was almost like he was seeing, am I going to make the next move, or is he going to make the next move? So he starts pacing in like an oval pattern, looking at me. Every time I throw my gun back up, he'd stop. He would turn his head to the side and look at me. Don't you do it. Don't you do it.
So like clearly displaying advanced thought.
Yes.
Like way beyond any sort of animal level.
Man. Oh man. I'm thinking about it, and I'm getting chill bumps again.
I mean, you're stirring up emotions in me hearing this story for the first time, and reflecting on the emotional impact that my own experiences left me with. So I understand completely, man. And like I said, if you need to take a minute, I know I'm sitting here being awfully quiet, man, but it's just, you've got me on the edge of my seat. I'm just processing all this. Right now, I can tell you I've talked to hundreds of witnesses, man, in the past over 20 years, read thousands of sighting reports, and this is one of the best witness accounts I've ever heard, and you're not even done. So, wow.
It gets a little bit worse, but anyways, so I'm just, before I go on, I'm just trying to give you more detail.
Yeah, of course.
About this guy. The hair on top of his head wasn't very long. It was more like spiky.
Mm-hmm. What was the facial hair pattern like?
He didn't have he had like a little beard going on, but he didn't have a whole lot of facial hair. Okay. And his skin was black. It was black, but leathery. Mm-hmm. Not like an African American black, a different kind of black.
Would you compare it to like the same type of skin of like a gorilla or a chimpanzee, or?
Pretty close, but still different, man. The face on him, ever since my encounter, I've had a lot. I've looked at a lot of even fake Bigfoots, just to see if I can come up with something close. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I sent you something maybe last week. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Of the closest thing I can come up. Larry Batson drew my Bigfoot. Yeah, he drew my Bigfoot for me. He got pretty close, man. He's really good at what he does. It wasn't exact, but it was pretty darn close. Mm-hmm. Another thing, man. Everybody says that these things don't have a neck. They do have a neck. The problem is they have so much going on in their shoulders, muscular wise and stuff, mm-hmm. that you cannot see the neck. But he definitely turned his head and looked at me, and then you cannot do that without a neck, Right. They got a neck, but they just have so much going on, and in their upper shoulders and stuff, that you just can't see the neck, and it really does look weird. It looks weird. I got a chance to look at this guy for a hot minute. So anyways, he's going in circles, and I don't know what the deal is, but he stopped and he opened his mouth. I don't know if it was a big yawn he was taking or something defensive that they do. I'm not sure, but he had all of his teeth were. He didn't have. I didn't see. I've heard some encounters where they talk about canines on these things. I never seen any canines. Okay. Their teeth are perfectly square like ours, much bigger, more like horse teeth. They were perfectly white. That's why I think maybe this guy wasn't, he might've been the alpha, but he wasn't alpha for the area, but I don't think he was entirely very old. His biceps were pretty big, but what stood out was his forearms. His hands his fingertips went past his knees. He just had that big barrel chest, a lot of hair going on though, a lot of hair, but you can look at him and see, like in between patches, you can see his skin. It was ashy gray. The inside of his mouth was solid black too, like his eyes. Huh. Very, 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 very strange. So this keeps going on, and I'm looking at the sun. I said, man, I got to do something. So I looked at him one more time in the scope. I said, should I just shoot him in the head and just get it over with, and I'll get out of here and I'll call the law? whatever. I looked at him again, and I put my finger on the trigger, and I looked at him real good, and I couldn't do it. He looked so human in the face, and he wasn't really posing a threat at that moment. Like, he wasn't coming and trying to shake me out of the tree or anything.
I mean, you've been having this standoff for quite a while at this point.
Right. Oh, man. And it was one of them situations, you know, you have to make a choice. You have to do something. Mm-hmm. So I give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm shaking. You know, I'm out of my mind at this moment, you know. I finally looked at him. He was close again, and I looked at him, and I tried to talk to him. I just said, "What do you want?" And when I did that, he yelled again, and I got to see it really good. When he yelled, he started from his gut, and he let out a roar. And this is the scariest part of this encounter for me, because I see it all the time. When he yelled so hard that his face caved in on top of itself. Imagine that. His teeth were sticking out, and it was like his forehead and it didn't even look real. It looked like something out of a comic book. His face caved in on top of itself and then went back to normal. When he did that, he got on all fours like a horse or a dog and sprinted across the power line. I don't know if I pissed him off or what, but he was ripping up gallberry bushes on the other side of the power line, chunking them in the middle. I mean, roots and all.
Yeah.
He was chunking them in the middle of power lines. He was knocking trees down. He was knocking down a bunch of little trees. I didn't see like any big pine trees fall, but he was knocking a lot of stuff down, and he was not happy. And I'm like, oh God, that's when I said, I'm going to die. I'm going to die here today. He's going to come back, and he's going to either climb up this tree. He's too big. What I got in my hands is not going to be enough. He's going to kill me. You got to remember, I'm facing west. Mm-hmm. Okay. Remember this. I'm facing west. He goes west, starts ripping everything up, but he starts moving north, but he's still yelling, and like about every 30 seconds he screams. It's like, I guess he's standing up and screaming. He got probably about another 100 yards north, and he shot. At this point, I'm standing up in my tree stand. I'm trying to pinpoint this guy. I seen something black fly back across the power lines, but it was north of me, but on my side. He's still yelling and screaming, and he just keeps getting further and further and further. I want to say at one point he probably got about 150 to 175 yards north of me. That's when I came out that tree. I'm in one of them. It's not like a fixed stand. It's an actual tree climbing stand.
Yeah.
It usually takes me to get that high, probably 21, 22 jacks. I was down in about 8.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm hitting my elbows on the platform trying to get down. I had everything still up in a tree. I had my backpack, all my hunting stuff, all my calls, everything. I left it up in a tree. I jacked down. I threw that gun behind me, and I started running down the power lines. I could still hear him screaming, yelling, doing what he's doing, but he's not like following me or anything. So I started running down the power line, and you got to remember, I'm probably a good 650 feet, no, yards. Sorry, not feet. Mm-hmm. I wish it would have been that close to my truck. So I started running down the power lines, and, at this time, I'm kind of a big guy. I start getting winded. So I'm going from a full run to just a fast walk. Once I got about 100 yards down the power line, I hear something on the side of me. It's probably about 30 yards in the woods. And it's not dark yet, but the sun has already passed the trees at this moment, but it's not so dark to where you can't see. You can still see pretty good. So I'm running down this power line, and I have to stop to get my wind. And I got this thing on the side of me, and I'm thinking, man, he must have circled back. I said, there's no way. It's impossible. I said, and then I heard him scream again way back there. I said, okay, there's something else on the side of me. But every time I would run and stop, it would stop. I'd pick it back up, walk real fast, stop, it would stop. So I started running again as fast as I could. It was running step for step, beat by beat. And when I would stop, it would stop. And there's a point on this power line where the woods kind of come out on a plateau or like a little island. And I noticed that was coming up. I knew it very well, that plateau. And it was like, it was 75 yards away, and I'm running, and it's like this thing's closing in on me. You know, it went from 30 to 20 to 15 to 10 yards. It just stayed just enough out of the woods where I couldn't see it.
But it's coming at an angle to intersect you.
It's fixing to intersect me. And I said, as soon as I make this island, whatever this is going to jump on me. I got to do something. So I get to the island, I stop, and I fired a shot. 7mm Magnum. It's a pretty big gun. Definitely a big gun for here. You know.
Yeah.
They hunt moose and elk with that gun out west. You know.
Yeah.
When I fired that shot in the air, everything stopped. Everything stopped. I no longer heard him way back there, and whatever was following me quit following me. So I didn't make anything of it. I just kept walking. I said, that's good. I kept walking and walking and walking. It gets to be probably about 300 yards to my truck by then. And I can only see like the top of my truck. Cause you know, there's hills and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When I seen the top of my truck, man, I caught another gear. I wasn't getting tired anymore.
Yeah. The end zone.
Yes. We're talking about 300 yards as fast as I can run. I got my rifle popping me in the back. I'm running so hard, the barrel of the rifle, every time I take a step is just busting the hell out of the back of my head. I'm running. I get to my truck, and oh man, this is pretty scary. I get to my truck, and I got a voice in my head saying, Mike, don't play around. Don't let the curiosity get the best of you. Put your keys in that truck, crank it, and get the hell out of there. And I did exactly that. But as soon as I stuck my key into the truck, not to crank it, just to open the door, one more last time, and I don't know if it was whatever was chasing me, which now I believe it was another one, or if it was old boy way back there. He let loose one more time. It was way back there, and this here sounded different. It was more like a baboon screech, like a whip.
Huh.
Yes, way back there though. I got in my truck, and this particular dirt road that I was on had a cul-de-sac, you know, a turnaround, probably about 200 yards down the road. I wasn't going there. I backed up in the ditch, almost got my truck stuck. And I come out of that management area, and you got to understand, it's all dirt roads. I'm fishtailing. I'm surprised I didn't wreck my truck. I finally hit some blacktop, and I finally get to Highway 26, and I'm doing 100 plus. And then I finally catch Highway 15 back home to the coast, 100 plus. I get home. I live in a city. It didn't matter. I got out of my truck, grabbed my gun, walked in the house, put the shower on full blast cold, and laid there in a fetal position for about an hour, trying to make sense of everything that happened. Wanting to know if it was real. I mean, how do you tell anybody that?
Right.
How do you tell anybody that you just seen a man that looks like an easily 8-foot man, 7.5 feet man that looks like an ape living out in the woods amongst you? How do you tell a skeptic that without being ridiculed? You can't.
A lot of people don't.
It took me a long time to come up with I'm not going to say a long time. It took to talk about it again. The first person I told was my dad, of course. And my dad's, he's ex-military. It wasn't easy. I think at first, I think he believes me now, but I think at first he wanted to believe me because he loves me because I'm a son. But I think it took him a minute. And I'll tell you what, when hunting season came about, the year after, it was hard. It's hard to get back in the woods, man. After that.
Did you go back to that spot?
Went back. I didn't go to hunt it. I went to retrieve the rest of the stuff. When I got back to it, everything, like my book bag, it was all dry rotted. It was 6 months later. I went in there with a crew. Everybody packing, of course. Yeah, I'll never get back to that spot. I'll never get back to Leaf River again. Not to hunt, I don't think. Not there. I had a lot of problems, even last year, hunting season. I like to hunt during the evening. I've always had better success in the evening time. A lot of people like to hunt early morning. I'm just not a really good morning person. I mean, I'll still hunt in the morning, but it was really tough to stay past dark by myself. Took some getting used to. But people like Kerry Arnold, you can listen to any of his podcasts and he'll tell you it ruined his hunting life forever. He'll never get back in the woods, not by himself.
I try to put myself in the position of the person that I'm talking to, mentally, of course.
Yeah.
See, with my first encounter, I was out there looking for them with a group of people, which is an entirely different set of circumstances than somebody who doesn't even think about these things and isn't out there looking for them. And then to have the type of encounter you had. This isn't, I saw one crossing the road in front of my headlights or, standing in the tree line. It's not a Harry and the Henderson story.
No.
How have you coped with it over the years? It's 2 years now?
Yeah. To be honest with you, this is coming straight from the heart. Other people.
Yeah.
Other people that's had encounters has been my best help. Other people. I've emailed people. I've talked to people on the phone. I've talked to people. I mean, you're helping me right now. Just to get just to let that energy out again. Mm-hmm. Is helping me. I mean, it's not so bad anymore to where, I'm waking up out of a dead sleep screaming, which did happen a lot. I just don't understand. I know these things are here because I witnessed it, and I know I'm not batshit crazy. Talking to other people that do research and stuff like that. I think the government knows about these things, man. They gotta know.
I can tell you that was my first, after everything mentally and emotionally settled down with me, where I was able to start processing. Again, I'm not comparing my own stuff to yours.
Right.
I did not have that type of encounter.
Everybody has their own odyssey.
Right. But the fact that at some point You go through the process of trying to figure out what you're seeing. Your mind's not wanting to accept it. It doesn't match anything that you've ever seen before.
Right.
And after all of this, you get to the point where, okay, these things are real. These things exist. If myself, I was in my early 20s, live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, met a group of people off the internet, went out, looked for this thing, and saw one. If I can do that, this is what I thought at the time, if I'm able to do that, there is no way that the government doesn't know they're there.
All the, like all the 411 missing stuff. I mean, it's got to be connected, man.
I mean, there's connected. I mean, there's several well-known people in the Bigfoot community who are military or former military who have had sightings and reported it and have been public about it. So obviously, yes, at some level the government knows about it, but
without a doubt.
Why are they hiding it? Why are they keeping it such a secret?
I've asked that question a lot, man, to well-known Bigfoot people. And some of the answers that I'm getting is, let's see, the first one, they don't say anything about it because of loggers. Have you heard that one?
Oh, of course. I've heard them all, man. I've heard them all.
Yeah.
Of course. Loggers, Oh, well, all this timber industry and it shuts down. They're going to not make any money.
Because if it comes out public that they exist, then they're going to keep it as refuge, and the loggers are going to lose their money and this, that, and the other.
Right, the spotted owl story.
Oh yeah,
all of it. Yeah.
Hey, there was a guy in Florida, dude. He lived on the beach, and there was a sea turtle that laid eggs up under his house, and they paid this guy money to get in a hotel for like 2 months until the eggs hatched. Yeah. His own house.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll tell you what, man, it was scary, to say the least. I remember when I was a kid, the whole Patty thing. Mm-hmm. I didn't pay that no attention, I just thought that was another hoax. But, I rewatched that ever since, and the way that thing walked, and it brought tears to my eyes, man. I was like, wow. I said, that's what I seen.
I mean, physically, was what you saw comparable to Patty?
What I seen, I would say he was a little bit, couple inches taller, but I think he was a little bit more built than she was.
And she's big.
He was 8 foot.
She's a thick girl, though, is what I mean.
Oh yeah, she is a thick girl. She's a thick girl, no doubt about it. But from what I'm understanding, a lot of them Bigfoots out there in the Northwest like that, or Northern California, are bigger Bigfoots. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, I've had a lot of education on this, man, since I've had people come at me left and right.
Yeah.
With last 2 years, I have learned a lot, man. There's a lot of good people out there, man. You got some bad ones. I've come across some bad ones too. You
got to do your homework.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it just comes with the territory.
And I'll tell you what else freaked me out. I'm sure you've heard of Sierra Sounds.
Yeah.
All the talking and stuff when he was walking to me, mumbling whatever he was mumbling, sounded like some of that. So, yeah, he was like, I've tried to put two and two together. I was like, he was walking to me and he was mumbling, but it was like weird. It was like old Chinese men talk. It was like, I'm thinking, was he communicating to the other one that was like leading me out? Was that the female leading me out, or what?
I mean, it's all speculation. I think that's why a lot of people take the deep dive like you have done, trying so desperately to find those answers to all those questions.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's all you're left with. That's all you're left with at the end of the day, is the emotional and mental baggage of the event. Being part of that category of,
crazy
people that think Bigfoot's real.
Yeah.
And the PTSD of the event, you know?
Oh man, tell me about it. I'm telling you, man, sometimes when even in the summertime when I'm not hunting, if I head out to the woods, sometimes, man, I'm going down the highway. I look through them trees, man, and it's like cold. Sometimes it's like cold water rushing over me, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, you know, it's hard to explain, you know?
You have a son?
Yes.
What does he think about all this?
I think he's on the fence about it.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of, he's so into, he's so into his boy stuff, you know? I don't think that it's time. I mean, he knows. I've told him everything. He knows, but it's kind of like he's into his boy stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, Dad. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's not like I get a lot of questions about it or anything like that.
I mean, it's really frustrating. I mean,
it is.
You know, if I talk to my wife about it, you know, probably about once a year, it will come up. In a direct conversation of, you know, do you believe me or not? And the answer is always the same. I believe you saw something.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, here I am. I've been hosting Bigfoot podcasts off and on for years now. It's been my daily life for over 20 years.
I'll tell you another thing, man. Like, going back into the encounter, there was a moment I was going to pull a trigger on this guy.
I was just trying to give you a breather.
No, you're good, man.
We can go right back into the encounter because I've got questions for sure. And I mean, I think you're talking about one of my biggest questions, you know, is that moment where you have to make the decision.
To shoot him or not to shoot him.
Yeah.
I tell you what, man, I looked in that scope and I seen a human being, man. Maybe these things are people, man, without a doubt. If it had been a dog man or something like that, I would have blew the brains out the back of his head. But this guy looks so human in the face; it was ridiculous. I was seeing a people. I wasn't seeing they call them creatures and stuff, which I guess you can call them a creature. Call them whatever you want. But you look at one of these guys up close, and I seen a person. Mm-hmm. Humanity kicked in is what happened. I don't know, what Wes from Sasquatch Chronicles, his favorite thing he likes to do on a show, ask everybody, what do you think these things are? Man, it's hard to say. I think there's human DNA for sure. I don't, I guess if you want to get biblical about it and you want to talk about, giants and stuff, maybe there's some of that attached to it.
I mean,
they're definitely huge.
I'm with you. It's hard to put them into a category. And the farthest I've ever gotten at this point, which I reserve the right to change my opinion at any given moment.
Oh, yeah.
They're a human, but different. They're not the same kind of human we are.
They are if there's any missing link out there, they are the missing link, without a doubt. Now, other cryptids. I had my own Bigfoot encounter, but other cryptids like dogmen and stuff, I'm not saying they're not real. I mean, I believe anything's real after that, but I just don't dig into that. I'm more into the Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm. You talked about the screams or the roars or the yells, whatever, that up close one where you talked about the face concaving on itself.
Yes.
Could you kind of describe that some more?
It was weird. It was like something out of a DC comic book. He looked at me and his eyes squinted, and it's like he come from his gut, took a big breath and blew. And when he blew like that, it was just one big gigantic scream mixed with a lion roar. And it was just weird. It was like his eyelids, his eyes, his cheekbones, everything just protruded to the front of his face. It was weird. And then it just went back to normal.
Wow.
There was that much energy in his yell. It basically made his face look deformed like that. That's the best way I can explain it.
I mean, you know about all the theories out there with infrasound, I'm sure.
Yes, I've heard of infrasound. Yeah,
I mean,
I heard it can bust you up pretty bad. I didn't have that experience, but man, even the cloaking and stuff,
yeah.
I don't put it past them, man. I think these things are God gifted. They have to be. They're the best hiders in the world. I mean, they live in all the nasty elements that Earth can give you. I mean, there's something to these beings they're special. They're very special. And I even noticed, I didn't mention this, I noticed when he was running on all fours, it was, even when he was walking to me from 120 yards away, it was like I seen him, he started walking towards me, and it was like in no time he was there. He was just right there. It took him no time. It was almost like he was gliding when he was walking. I mean, I don't know if that's what he was doing, if he's just got it, right. If his steps are just so much bigger than ours, it don't take him as much time. But it was very paranormal.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. I've had a couple different people talk about episodes of missing time, as they describe it, during their encounters.
Yeah. I didn't get that. Maybe there was some missing time, maybe, but I don't think so, man.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I was in survival mode is what I was in.
Mm-hmm.
My adrenaline was through the roof, and I was just looking for, exit strategy. I did. And the only reason I got the good shots, the good looks at him, it was just observation, just for survival. It wasn't like, I'm looking at this and, how unique,
Right,
it was
right.
nothing like that. It was totally, and it took a while, to be honest with you. It took a while for a lot of this to come back to me. It took a while, because there was a lot of stuff that I forgot that came back to me later. Now, if that probably don't make any sense, but I swear to God, it's true.
No, it does. It makes sense. I mean, that happens to a lot of people that go through highly traumatic situations. And seeing something that's not supposed to exist, and then having a very in-your-face confrontational encounter like that.
Yeah.
I mean, your brain is going to do what it needs to do to try and protect you. And that's burying some of the memories and, dealing with what it can deal with. Why do you think it came at you like that instead of just running off?
I've asked myself that question a million times. When I said hey to him, when I finally gave away my position and waved my hands, I wonder, if these things are so secretive, why didn't he just dart off,
Right.
He didn't do that. This guy had no fear. He walked straight to me. The only time he would act a little funny is when I would put my gun back on him. He would turn his head and look at me with one eye. And it was that look like, don't you do it. Don't you do it. So they got to know what guns are, man. And I've heard so many other encounters where somebody pulls a gun on one and they scream at them. It's like they know what they are, bad boomstick. This is bad.
I mean, I'm sure they've observed them over the years countless times, I mean, this thing obviously showed signs of intelligence, and it's hanging out in a hunting area. So it has to see the stuff. It has to know how to avoid the stuff. It has to know what the stuff does, I'm sure.
I think, to be honest with you, he had his girly girl with him, or he had a son with him or a brother with him. I don't think he knew I was there. I think they was doing the same thing I was doing for an ambush on a deer or a hog or whatever. And I spoiled their hunt. I think that's what happened.
I'm kind of wondering, you mentioned the talking.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Lots of people have mentioned the talking.
Yep.
I mean, I think I would like to say it's most likely a given that they do it.
They got a language.
And that's not doubting you or anything. I've experienced talking in the woods. I've never, you're one of the few people that have actually witnessed a Bigfoot doing these things.
Yes.
I'm kind of wondering, you were so far up in the tree hunting, he didn't know you were there, and whenever you yelled at him, I'm wondering if he didn't just not realize that that's a human.
That's a good question.
Maybe he thought it was, well,
it was strange because when I finally gave away my position and waved at him, it was like he before I said anything, before I gave what he was looking at me, like in my general direction, trying to make out what, something. Right. And when I finally did that, his eyes got real big. It's like, oh, that's what it is. It's a guy up at a tree. It was like that.
Who's not supposed to be there.
Right. And I'm going to tell you another thing. This is very important. Before this experience, I was a skeptic 100%, didn't believe it, just thought it was all bullcrap. But, it made me go back in history, throughout my younger years, hunting, and they've always been around. I've heard tree knocks. I've heard whoops. I've heard everything, and I've always wrote it off to not Bigfoot. It's some kind of nocturnal bird, or there's somebody doing construction, or there's somebody, some assholes hitting on a tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've always been around.
I think that's one of the ways that they have remained hidden all these years, is because most people who experience them don't realize it and just write it off as other things.
There was one time I was hunting. This was years ago, but I was out in the middle of nowhere where there's no houses, no nothing. Not in the same exact spot, not even in the same area, but somewhere where it's just vast forest. Like, if you don't have a truck or a vehicle, period, you're like, you can't walk out of there. It's too much. Mm-hmm. It takes you about an hour to get to where you're going. One of them kind of deals.
Right.
I've hunted on power lines like that before, and I've heard kids talking before, like distant, like kids playing. Mm-hmm. I'm like, what the hell is that? Is that kids in the woods? Like way off. Like you can't hear what they're saying. Just kind of like, I'm like, what the hell? I'm out in the middle of nowhere, but I always wrote it off. That's probably some hunters' kids. And then, come out of there and there's nobody's even been down the road.
And I'm sure over the years hunting, you've experienced the woods make funny noises, man.
Sure they do.
Things sound different in the woods.
Yes. I'll tell you what, and especially at nighttime, man, you get lost in the woods, even if you're not being chased by anything, everything looks the same.
Yeah.
I've been lost a bunch in the woods when I was a kid. There's been a couple scary times when I think I was going to get out, but eventually did. But man, you get in the woods and you got one of them after you and it's dark, you're going to be in some trouble.
I mean, did you feel threatened?
I didn't start feeling threatened until the last minute. I think when he walked up to my tree, I think he'd probably had seen humans before, but he never one-on-one like that. Mm-hmm. Not that close. It's hard to say, man. I didn't start feeling threatened until he ran across the power line and started ripping up bushes and throwing it. And I pissed him off.
Yeah.
By talking to him. It was like he didn't want me to talk to him, but all I told him was, I asked him what he wanted. I'm like, what do you want? I said it pretty loud, but I mean, it was either that or I was going to have to shoot him, or I was going to, I got to get out the woods.
Yeah, you have to come down that tree at some time.
Yeah. And I'd rather do it when I got some daylight.
Yeah, you don't want to be up there after dark.
Whoo, yeah. These, like I said, man, I think these things are God gifted without a doubt. God gifted. I think they've always been there. They might be older than we are. We don't know, but they're there. They are there. And, I think they're seasonal too. I think they do travel. I think they like water sources. I think water and food sources. I don't know if it was the right place at the right time, but I mean, everybody that I talked to in the Bigfoot community said I hit the jackpot. I don't consider that hitting the jackpot. I mean, I just got to see something that's being hidden from us.
Yeah, I think it was just one of those dumb luck things.
Yes, dumb luck.
You were way up in the tree, so your scent was above everything. You've got camouflage on. You're hunting, so you're being quiet.
Yep.
And this one just made a mistake.
Yep. I mean, I was decked out too, face painted, everything.
Did you see any sign of deer in the area that you remember?
Oh yeah. I've killed that exact tree that I was hunting out of. Mm-hmm. I've killed a lot of deer out of that tree. Not that day, but I mean,
right.
It was one of my favorite spots to go to. It was a very nice, peaceful spot.
So like that day, a lot of people talk about on that day, it was completely silent. There wasn't any animals or anything. Did you ever get that feeling or anything?
Yeah, I've heard that. Everything gets quiet. It was a normal day. Mm-hmm. It was just a normal day. Even like when I seen him, I didn't notice anything getting quiet, all the bugs shutting up and no more birds. It was normal.
How long was the hair on the body?
Hair on the body. His back had a lot of hair, man. His back had long hair. He had 7-8 inches on his back. His forearms had a lot of hair.
Were the hands covered?
No, I could see the hands. Got to see the hands. And another thing, I left this out too. When he got close to me and I was like really looking at him, I could tell he must have, when he was on the power lines or before that, he must have been digging in some dirt because he had a bunch of dirt up under his fingernails.
Huh.
Bunch of black mud looking stuff. And it was weird. It was like his fingernails, they weren't long, but it was like they was naturally like busted off short.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know if they bite their fingernails off or if they just use their hands so much they can't keep them. But it was he was the real deal, man. And his ears, I got to see one of his ears. Their ears are about the same size as ours. Smaller. It like makes no sense because how big their head is and how little their ears are.
You may be one of the only people on the planet that has seen a Bigfoot ear.
Yeah. I got to see it every time. I got to see it a few times. Every time I would put my gun up at him, he would turn his head to the side and look at me with that one eye, and I would see his eye and his ear sticking out. And it was like, I didn't notice it at the time, but just thinking back, I'm like, damn, his head's this big and his ears are like normal, like ours. It was weird.
But same shape and everything.
Same shape.
That's interesting because our ears are designed specifically
for sound.
Yeah. Stereoscopic hearing or whatever it's called.
Oh yeah.
So that's really interesting. The time that he opened his mouth, he didn't make any kind of vocalization whenever he did that.
Nope. No, he didn't. It was weird. It was like it was pretty quick. Mm-hmm. But it's like he opened his mouth and it was just like a I don't know, probably about a 5 or 6, maybe 7-second yawn. Mm-hmm. But it was like when he did it, it was like his shoulders were like shaking when he did it. So maybe he was like, I don't know, stretching. It was weird. inside of his mouth, like the inside of his cheeks were like black. He had his teeth were white, dude. It was crazy. He didn't have like yellow teeth. That's why I think he might have been a younger one.
Yeah.
A lot of people say they got canines. I didn't see any canines, and maybe unless they were maybe broken off. The teeth were they were like ours, like square like ours, but it was different. It was more like horse teeth. Weird, but bigger than, shaped like horse teeth, but bigger than horse teeth, like wider.
So designed for like grinding and stuff of like vegetation, but not really ripping and tearing.
If there's anything I can stress the most about his face, was his skin. Like his forehead was black, man, like black. And he had like really, really high cheekbones. That's why I said kind of Native American looking. Mm-hmm. Really high cheekbones, and his nose was big. It was hooded like a human nose, but it was much wider. But it wasn't like smashed in like a gorilla's nose. What was
the nose bridge like? Do you recall?
The bridge?
I know that's a really small detail to pinpoint, but just curious.
The best I can remember about his nose is it was just like ours. The nose bridge was probably a little wider. Mm-hmm. But his eye bridge, where his eye sockets are on the top, was huge.
Yeah,
really big. And I think it's weird because I think when he first walked up, there was still enough sun to 30 yards is not very far away. Mm-hmm. But I got to look at him through the scope at 30 yards, and I got to see everything, dude. It was crazy. I mean, if he would have had fleas on him, I probably could have seen the fleas. Yeah. I wasn't looking for that, but he was just big, man. Really big.
Like bodybuilder big, that kind of build, like.
Yeah. He had really big shoulders. His like the front of his arms, like his deltoids were like cantaloupes on his arms.
Large traps.
Yeah, large traps. His biceps were big, but it was almost like his forearms were bigger. Mm-hmm. He had long arms. Really long arms.
Whenever it went down on all fours and ran off.
It was the weirdest thing I ever seen in my life, man. It was like a lurpy dog. It was like, you ever seen like a Great Dane run?
Yeah, yeah.
Like it looks stupid.
Yeah.
Like that. Like a lurpy dog.
Could you tell if the hands were in fists or out flat whenever it ran on all fours?
That's not really coming to me right now. I think it just, it's weird because they're a bipedal creature, but it's like running off on all fours is also natural for them. I don't know if they run faster like that or if it was a defense thing, or I don't know. It was weird. If you I've watched a bunch of YouTube videos of like gorillas on all fours running. Mm-hmm. They got like their knuckles on the ground and all that. It wasn't nothing like that. It was weird. It was, I don't know what the deal with that was. Maybe they can run faster like that. I don't know.
It's weird that he would drop down on all fours like that after he approached you on two legs. So,
yep.
Apparently it was natural either way.
And he might have, the very first time I caught him in the peripheral when I didn't know what it was, he could have walked out of the woods on all fours. I just didn't get a chance to see that, because once I caught that peripheral and I looked over there and I put the gun on him, he was already sitting down on his butt, but he was facing away from me, and he had his, I don't know, it was weird. It didn't even look human. It was just, he was sitting on his butt. I'm trying to picture myself sitting on the ground on my butt. I'd probably have my knees up and my arms around my legs. It wasn't like that. Mm-hmm. It's like he had his hands on the ground and just sitting on his butt with his knees up. Huh. It was weird. I didn't get it, but I'm saying that's how he was sitting, because I couldn't see his knees because he had his back towards me.
Right.
But I got, one thing I can stress is the hair on his back. That's the very first thing I seen. And it was not like dog hair or hide. It was just like human hair, like Nikki Sixx out of Motley Crue.
Yeah.
But on his back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was big.
And then the hair on the head was shorter. Man.
He was he was quite the creature, man. I'll never forget it as long as I live. You just can't undo that, you know?
So do you ever think you might get to the point where you would go out and pursue these things?
Oh man. At this moment, I'm more interested in maybe starting something myself. Is like maybe get like what you're doing, like getting people's encounters or something.
Yeah. And
maybe work my way to that, but I'll never do it by myself.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just wow, man. I'm just really blown away by this. This was a really amazing encounter. I know, you're the one that has to live with it. So I'm sure it's very different whenever people hear it compared to how you feel about it. But
it was very long. That's what sticks out about it. It's very long. It was probably from the time I seen him on the power line when he first popped out to I'm jacking down from my tree running for my life. That was probably about 25, 30 minutes.
Wow.
I do remember getting there and getting up the tree. I wanted to be up the tree no later than 2:00. That way I can, because deer, they survive off of their nose.
Right.
And what you want to do is you want to get up the tree quick, and you want the smell to get, your human scent to get out the area.
Right.
So you always want to go a couple hours early. There's nothing worse than, having a couple deer come your way and then they stick their head up and their tail goes straight up and they start blowing because they smell you.
Right.
There's nothing worse than that,
And typically hunters are trying to catch the deer, correct me if I'm wrong, but traveling in and out from a feed area going to their bedding area or whatever, they follow the same routes.
Some do. That's what I do. A lot of hunters just get right on the ryegrass plot. Mm-hmm. I don't do that. I've always had better luck, hunting a corridor. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you what we did do last year. This is kind of not Bigfoot related, but it kind of helps me. Me and my family, we bought 170 acres of woods. We're going to turn it into like a little hunting camp. It's only like 4 of us.
Yeah.
So I think that might be a little bit easier. There's other properties adjacent to it. I mean, I'll still go hunting. Don't get me wrong. I just, it's head's all, my head's always going to be on a swivel no matter what.
I just find it really fascinating because I grew up in a family of outdoorsmen, grew up hunting and fishing. I get the mentality of hunters, I understand it. But people oftentimes, one of the main arguments you even hear against Bigfoot is, well, why don't more hunters report them? Why don't hunters ever see them? And here you are, a hunter. I talk to hunters all the time that tell me stories. And I understand why a lot of hunters wouldn't tell the story if they saw one. What made you decide to take that leap of faith, and tell your story to people?
It took a minute. I think the main reason I did it is because every time I just talked about it just a little bit to somebody close to me or something, and I got it out, it was like a huge weight off my shoulders. Mm-hmm. People I trust. I'm going to tell you, the very first interview that I did with Wes German, dude, it was intense, man. I had to stop a bunch of times. I was bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
It took a long time. And, They don't have me on the recording bawling my eyes out, but we had he did it just like you doing it with the messenger.
Yeah.
But there was a couple times I had to stop, man. I had to catch a breath. It was hard. Absolutely.
I mean,
Carrie, the big Carrie Arnold, he goes live.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that was my first real test, though, because it was live and we couldn't mess it up or anything like that. So that was my first big test. And plus his encounter was like 30 miles away from mine. And it's so, if you ever listen to his, I don't know if you've ever heard his encounter, you need to listen to it. There's a lot of similarities. I don't know if Bigfoot in Mississippi just act the same or whatever, but he was turkey hunting, and he got in trouble with one. He had one walk up on him, and I think the one that walked up on him was actually bigger than mine, and it did not like the fact that he was in the woods hunting.
Huh.
And yeah, it was pretty intense. But if you ever want to hear his encounter, you can just go to Bigfoot Odyssey. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. He does a lot of stuff too. He's been doing a lot of research.
Yeah.
He goes out to South Florida a lot with some guys, and they've been getting a few things.
So for anybody out there listening who is sitting on the fence, or has had an encounter and doesn't really know how to talk about it, or what advice do you have for people that have experienced one of these things?
Here's the thing. No matter what you do in life, no matter what happens to you in life, you're always going to have people that's going to ridicule you because it didn't happen to them, or they just think you're stupid. My advice is just tell your story. Tell your story and get it off your chest. That was the best thing for me. I've done, this is my third podcast I've done, and every one of them, I get some negative comments and stuff like that. Oh yeah, this guy's full of it. You just can't let that bother you. Just get your story out. That's my advice, is get your story out and don't worry about it. Because once you start getting your story out, it just, that weight on your shoulders that's crushing you, it's going to suppress it.
I couldn't agree more, man. Mike, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing this story.
No problem, man.
Anybody out there who's listening who has had an encounter and you'd like to share it on the show, or just talk to somebody that's been through it and won't laugh at you or think you're crazy, give me an email at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Check me out on Instagram and Facebook. You can find me @ Bigfoot Crossroads. I'm on Twitter @BF Crossroads. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.